Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto gets pregnant Fem Itachi. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. Uzumaki Naruto awoke to the sound of footsteps. The first thing to tip him off that this wasn't a normal situation was the fact that he lay upon the cold, hard, slightly damp ground. Normally this wouldn't be a concern for Naruto as he often exhausted himself training and spent the night passed out in some form of wildlife or another. The difference here lay in what he could smell, or rather what he couldn't. None of the usual smells of the forest or even the outside graced his senses. Only the damp, dank smell of a cave. The footsteps echoed vastly in, what he could only assume as, a large cave. Groaning, he rolled over and let out a hoarse cough. He felt his insides clench unpleasantly as his coughing turned to gagging. Lucky for him, his stomach was empty and after a few more unpleasant seconds the gagging subsided. Swallowing dryly, he struggled to push himself onto his forearms as the sound of the footsteps approached. Fighting through the nausea and pain, his mind raced trying to recall anything to explain the current situation he found himself in. The footsteps stopped suddenly and Naruto tensed, straining his ears for the lightest breathing, anything to tell him where the unknown person was. Well Naruto, what will we do with you? The normal conventions don't seem to be working. The Gedo Mazo was unable to extract the Kyuubi. I'll have to try something else it seems. The voice was mocking and while unfamiliar, his stomach clenched in dread. The dread was not his own, but belonged to the fox within him, causing his own dread at the realization. Who are you? He asked, breathing rapidly through the pain in his muscles and finally pushing his abused body into a sitting position. A deep chuckle echoed hollowly in the caves causing the hairs on the back of Naruto's neck to stand up on instinct. Who am I? I guess you can call me Uchiha Madara, answered the voice, an orange masked face appearing in Naruto's vision, a single Sharingan eye spinning rapidly. Kyuubi howled within the blonde, his anger echoing in Naruto's skull. The man seemed to study him, looking right through him at the Kyuubi who growled and thrashed within his seal. Sleep, he ordered, the Tomo spinning to morph into the Mangekyo Sharingan. Naruto had no choice but to obey idly wondering if the man was telling him to sleep or the frantic Kyuubi within him. When Naruto woke next even before opening his eyes he realized he was chained to a wall. Tugging at the chains to test his restraints he dimly noted that their clanging didn't seem to echo as much. Guessing that he was most likely in a smaller caved area, he opened his eyes. There appeared to be a door right across from him. It was shut tightly. A small crudely made table next to the door, a melted candle the only light in the room. There was a constant drip, the only sound in the room, assuring Naruto that his earlier guess had been right. Trying to recall anything else that could help him he received a blank causing him to grunt in frustration. He let out a hopeless sigh, slamming his head against the cave wall. Think Naruto think, he chanted like a mantra. Closing his eyes once more, he entered a meditative state. Immediately he was dragged into the familiar sewer of his subconscious mind. Kyuubi, he greeted calmly, eyes drifting up the tall gates to immediately focus on the single red glowing eye complete with slitted pupil. Do you have any idea what you have done? The great fox growled, causing the blonde to frown. Naruto remained silent, waiting expectantly for the fox to fill him in. You have been captured by the Akatsuki, Kyuubi intoned, his muzzle stretching into a sadistic grin when the situation finally dawned on his container. Naruto's face was a mask of fear. But how? He questioned, desperately trying to recall his last moments. The Kyuubi huffed, a large gust of hot breath rolling into Naruto's face, his bangs whipping back from the force of the unnatural wind. You were on a mission, to rescue that traitorous Uchiha with that sensei of yours and the pink-haired one. The blonde-haired bomb artist that captured the host of the Shukaku as well as another in an orange mask that I now know to be Uchiha Madara captured you. They knocked you unconscious and brought you to their hideout. They attempted to extract me but were stopped by a failsafe of the seal that was triggered. Take a look for yourself, stated the kitsune, nodding his large head towards the containment seal on the gates. Naruto's eyes followed the movement and widened. The small seal tag had changed. The seal had spread past the paper, twining up the bars of the cage in intricate markings the blonde couldn't even begin to decipher. They continued up the ceiling of the cage and even on the floor underneath the great fox. the once black ink pulsating the pale blue color of chakra. "What is this?" he asked weakly, taking a step back on reflex. "I already explained it to you. Keep up as much as your tiny mortal brain can, our time here is limited. You are in the hands of the Akatsuki. You have yet to notice, but they have secured a chakra collar around your neck. You will not be able to expel chakra or gather any chakra from an outside source. This means you cannot use your chakra or mind for jutsu. Simply put, you are helpless right now. There is no chance of escape," explained the fox, lone eye fixating on the fear-riddled blonde. Naruto backed up once more. "Deep at the seal. They can't extract you, right?" he asked, hope lighting his face. Kyuubi snarled, a tail lashing out to smack the ground in front of the startled boy. "You fool, when has Uchiha Madara ever given up? I curse him and his wretched Sharingan. He will stop at nothing to control me. He has been attempting to do so since the time of Senju Hashirama, your first Hokage," he raged, eyes glowing ferally with the strength of his glare. Naruto frowned. "Why are you telling me this? You have no reason to help me. You hate me," he murmured, confusion masking his expression. Kyuubi huffed, "While it is true that I hate you, there is none I detest more than Uchiha Madara. That blasted Yondaime may have sealed me, but it was Uchiha Madara who made it possible by extracting me out of your mother. He is the one who set me on the village by hypnotizing me with his Sharingan. He will stop at nothing to extract me so I can be used as his pawn once more. Do not let your guard down," explained the fox, eye-searching Naruto's reaction. Naruto froze. My mother?" he asked with a choked gasp. Kyuubi sighed. "Your mother was Uzumaki Kushina, my previous host, grandniece of Uzumaki Mito, my first host and wife to Senju Hashirama. Your father was the Yondaime Hokage Namikaze Minato, none other than the one to curse you to this existence as a Jinchuriki, a human sacrifice. As much as I'd love to torment you over this, we have much more prudent matters to deal with," Kyuubi detailed, finishing with his voice filled with exasperation. Naruto took a deep breath, processing everything the Kyuubi said. "The enemy of my enemy is my friend?" he questioned, smiling darkly. The fox flashed his own sadistic grin. "I prefer being sealed in your flesh bag of a body over being free and utilized as a tool for Madara. This is why I will help you as much as I can. Madara will search for a way to extract me. This does not mean you are safe. They may torture you or do countless other things to you. He needs you alive, barely breathing is acceptable," he snarled, voice dropping with malice. "The good news is the collar does not stop the flow of chakra in your body. I will be able to heal any injuries you sustain short of dismemberment," he added, causing Naruto to choke. Naruto regained his composure, nodding grimly. Kyuubi seemed to turn his head towards the high ceiling of the cage. Looking down once more, he addressed Naruto. "Our time has run out. You must wake up now," he stated, his image seeming to distort into a swirl of red and black before fading into darkness. Naruto came to once more, blinking open his eyes. "Ah Naruto, how nice of you to join me. How is Kyuubi doing? Do send it my regards." Naruto was startled by the loud growl that rattled his brain but did not outwardly show it. "Kyuubi?" he questioned timidly. His mind raced to figure out how the fox was able to communicate with him while Naruto was out of the mindscape. "Fool, I have always been able to do so but chose not to. Do you not remember the host of the Ichibi driven mad by that pathetic excuse for a demon Shukaku?" said Kyuubi, answering Naruto's unvoiced question and causing the blonde to stiffen. "I am a part of your mind and as such I am able to hear your thoughts when I open the connection like this. Worry not, this is the first time I have done do. I have little need for your useless thoughts, Bratling," Kyuubi droned in an amused voice. "Pay attention, Uchiha Madara has woken you up. We need any intel we can possibly gather," he ordered, causing Naruto to immediately turn his attention to the masked man, his eyes raising. "Do not look him in the eye. The Mangekyo Sharingan can hypnotize or place anyone in a genjutsu immediately with eye contact. You know this from the clan slayer of the Uchiha. He is definitely my most liked Uchiha, what with his idea to extinct such a wretched clan. If only he would slay Madara and his traitorous brother then off himself," warned the fox, diving into a rant about the Uchiha. "That little seal your father used is giving me quite a bit of trouble. The conventional methods just aren't working," the man said in an almost sad tone. Continuing on with, lucky for me I have a few unconventional methods in mind. The Shiki Fujin is so unlike any other Fuinjutsu as it is powered by the Shinigami himself. In return for the sealing he takes the life of the caster. By attempting to extract Kyuubi it would undo the sealing, meaning the price paid would need to be returned. The Shinigami doesn't like to give back what he's taken, stated the Uchiha in a bland, almost unconcerned manner. Naruto swallowed, never moving his eyes higher than the chest in front of him, staring intently at a red cloud. Unconventional methods? He questioned, glad his voice remained strong. You really are less of an idiot than you are made out to be, aren't you Uzumaki Naruto? Madara replied, amusement dripping from his voice. Not waiting for a reply, he continued. I racked my brain for a solution, but any jutsu that tried to forcefully pull Kyuubi out will trigger the Death Reaper seal safeguard. Then an idea came to me, it's quite brilliant you see. If I can't forcefully extract Kyuubi then the solution is to naturally extract him, he explained, seeming quite proud of himself. Naruto was filled with a sense of dread that he knew instantly belonged to Kyuubi. Feeling fear rise up he pushed it down, continuing on his quest for information. How do you naturally extract a Biju? The only natural way is death, right? He questioned, successfully pushing down the anxiety that threatened to overcome him at his conclusion. A dark chuckle was his response. That is quite true young Naruto, but as you may already know the Death Reaper seal makes it so that if you die, Kyuubi will die with you and never return to this plane of existence. So killing you isn't really an option, well until I get my little fox out of there. Come now, you've proved your intelligence to be higher than I previously thought. Surely you can see where I am going with this? Goaded the man, causing Naruto's hands to clench into fists. Naruto stayed silent, Kyuubi's ever-growing unease serving to almost choke him in fear. I really am disappointed in you, teased Madara, before sighing. Though I suppose I can't really blame you for thinking of the obvious over the unobvious. I'll give you a hint. I plan to use the same method that was used on your mother, the previous Jinchuriki, he explained, radiating glee. Naruto froze, not saying anything. His mind worked feverishly to decipher what he was being told. Although Kyuubi explained about his mother, he never quite mentioned how the man extracted Kyuubi from her. Kyuubi chose this moment to be the bearer of bad news. Childbirth kit, he extracted me when the seal was weakened as she gave birth to you, he explained, the sense of dread only increasing. Naruto's eyes widened, fear causing him to carelessly raise his eyes to the single Sharingan eye of his captor. But I'm a boy, he choked out. Madara chuckled once more. Yes indeed you are, but that can easily be fixed. In fact, I know just the jutsu. Be grateful, I traded quite an important jutsu to Kabuto for this, he explained in a blast tone, taking enjoyment from the fear-filled blue eyes in front of him. You see, this jutsu is a kinjutsu of the extinct Hagamari clan. They used it for infiltration. The downside is, once used the person it is used on is unable to change back to the they once were. In other words, this is a very permanent change. Don't worry though, you won't have to live with being a woman long. You won't have to live long at all. 9 months isn't very long of a time when I've already waited a century, but I am a bit impatient, so I'm going to cast this jutsu now and begin my plans, he exclaimed, taking a step back from the blonde. His hands started to blur through seals so fast that Naruto was unable to keep up. Body transformation jutsu, he yelled, slamming his hands into the ground, like a summoning. Tendrils of chakra erupted from the ground, slithering towards the chained blonde, not unlike the Kagemane technique used by the Nara clan. Naruto screamed in pain as the first tentacle latched onto him, his screams growing as he was slowly covered in the malicious chakra. I'll just leave you to it then, muttered Madara, and Naruto could vaguely hear the chieful whistling over the sounds of his own screams as the man departed. Longer after that he blacked out. Waking up in the familiar sewer, Naruto was unable to move from where he lay half drowned in water, in front of the Kyuubi's cage. Naruto. Turning his head weakly to face Kyuubi, he groaned. Kyuubi seemed to sigh in relief, a single tail reaching through the bars and wrapping around Naruto's body. He carefully maneuvered the blonde through the bars, gently resting him on another fluffy tail. If Naruto wasn't in so much pain, he might have laughed at the thought of referring to the Kyuubi as fluffy, but alas, it was not meant to be. Naruto's eyes fluttered weakly. What's happening? he asked, blue eyes almost begging the fox to deny what he already knew. Kyuubi sighed. Your mortal body is changing from male to the female of your species, your spiritual body is beginning to reflect it, he answered, eyeing the blonde. Already Naruto's body had shrunk, losing a lot of its height, his muscles slimming down to adapt to his smaller, more feminine body. His hair had lengthened drastically, the spiky locks, smoothing out in a golden reflection of what his mother's hair once was. Naruto's eyes shut, tears of frustration building behind closed lids. Kyuubi, he choked, swallowing around the fear clogging up his throat. To impregnate me, that means, he almost sobbed, only to be cut off by the fox. Don't think about that, kid. We must get through this one step at a time, he interrupted, voice gentling into an almost purr-like quality. I don't want him to touch me, came the whispered admission from the blonde, his new female voice making the small and fragile tone much more effective. Kyuubi's expression did gentle then, his muzzle closing and eyes saddening. Uchiha Madara will not touch you, he replied, his voice growing harsh, as he spat the man's name like a curse. Unsaid as it was, Kyuubi could still hear Naruto's doubts as the blonde finally passed out from mental exhaustion. Moving into a laying position, the fox curled his tails around the slumbering girl in a protective fashion. Closing his eyes, he set to thinking of a solution. Naruto was beginning to hate waking up in caves chained to one thing or another. Opening his eyes proved to be harder than normal due to his tears drying and crusting his eyes closed. Blinking rapidly to clear them, he was unsurprised to find Uchiha Madara lounging against the wall directly across from him. The man seemed to be waiting for him to wake up because as soon as Naruto's eyes opened, he pushed off the wall, making his way to the blonde. Naruto flinched when a hand roughly grabbed his chin, forcing him to look into that hated Sharingan eye. Glaring with all his might, he scowled when the Uchiha chuckled. My Naruto, you sure are feisty, he cooed, hand moving to stroke the three whisker-like birthmarks on his right cheek. Don't touch me, hissed the blonde, Kyuubi growling angrily in the recesses of his mind. Madara chuckled once more. Should you be so lucky? The man mocked, releasing his bruising grip on the teen. Regrettably, my eternal Mangekyo keeps me from personally completing that part of my plan, but rest assured I have the perfect replacement, he teased, making Naruto stiffen. Madara outright laughed at the blonde. Speaking of, I will go discuss it with him now that I've seen the results of the jutsu myself. You make quite a beautiful female, he added, almost reluctantly stepping away from the blonde. As he disappeared, Naruto released the breath he knew she was holding. It's obvious he was no longer a boy, he didn't need to see it to believe it, he could feel it in the absence of his muscles. In the larger distance he had to look up at his tormentor and hear it in the softness of his voice. Naruto, we may be powerless to stop this, but I will immediately terminate any child that takes to your womb. Chakra circulation in the body is not stopped by the collar and they cannot stop it without killing us both, reassured Kyuubi. Killing a child? Questioned the blonde in a small voice. Kyuubi sighed reluctantly. I know this is not something you would easily do or even condone, but the whole ninja world is at stake here. There is still the Hachibi, but you cannot easily let him gain control of me. We have no choice but to use this method, he stated in a sympathetic voice, gaining strength at the end. Naruto closed her eyes. Do what you have to, she whispered in a defeated voice, drifting into an exhausted sleep. Waking up once more, Naruto was pleased, if not a little weary, to notice that she had been moved to a different room. While still obviously a cave, it had a distinct raise in temperature, leading Naruto to assume it is a lived-in room as compared to the dungeon she was previously in. Feeling on edge but unable to deny that the temperature raise pleased her, she continued her perusal. The second thing she noticed was that she was now laying on a bed, hands chained above her head. Immediately all the warmth in the room disappeared, leaving her cold. Anxiety built in her gut, her heart racing. Calm down, do not overstress yourself. I will help you through this. This part is inevitable, so prepare yourself. When it happens, you must meditate immediately in order to return to your subconscious. If you do not, you will be unable to and be awake throughout the whole process. I will deal with the repercussions if you manage to get pregnant, but it is highly unlikely to suck the first attempt. I am constantly brainstorming a way to get out of here, so bear with it for the moment, Kyuubi ordered, his voice gentle in order to calm the blonde. Naruto said nothing, instead choosing to try and calm her breathing. Her pattern of deep, in and out breaths halted by the opening of the door. Madara paused, eye traveling over the blonde. Smirking behind his mask, he approached the chained girl. When he got close enough, he reached into his cloak, removing a small vial. Naruto's heart raced at the sight. "What is that?" she whispered wearily, pulling on the chains restraining her arms and kicking with her legs to push herself up the mattress and away from the man. "This is a fertility drug. I was planning on giving you an aphrodisiac as well, but your partner told me not to," he replied, reaching out and grabbing her chained arm. He easily slid the needle into the soft juncture inside her elbow. Naruto struggled futilely, hissing at the slight sting of the needle. Kyuubi growled loudly in the background of her jumbled thoughts. Impatient as he was, Madara wasted no time leaving the room and closing the door with a soft click. Terror kept Naruto alert, any little noise making her flinch. It came as no surprise when the sound of footsteps heading in her direction reached her ears. She scrambled up the bed as far as she could, pulling her legs tightly to her chest and burying her face in them. She counted slowly in her head, and on the count of 10 the footsteps stopped right outside her door. She held her breath, not daring to make a sound, and waited. There was a click, the handle seeming to turn in slow motion, the door opening even slower. It was dark in the room, so her eyes strained to take in the emerging shape of a man, his head turning to face her. The glowing red of two Sharingan eyes was all she was able to see in the dark, but it was enough to identify the man. "Uchiha Itachi," she whispered, feeling her stomach drop like it was weighted down with lead. The man approached her silently, making her push back against the wall, praying it would just suck her in and she could escape what was happening. "Why are you doing this?" she asked in a small voice as he neared her. Sharingan eyes drifted to hers, the tomo spinning almost lazily as he continued his approach. His features became more visible as he reached her all too quickly for Naruto. "I'm just following orders, Naruto-kun," he answered in his usual monotone voice. His voice had shivers dancing along her spine, her mind instantly bringing up the hotel in Tanzaku-gai. "Don't worry, I will make this as painless as possible for you. Others would not be so kind," he added, his face emotionless. His hands moved then, gripping the front of his cloak and making Naruto flinch. He removed the garment, red clouds floating gracefully to pool at his feet. Underneath he wore a long-sleeved fishnet shirt with a short-sleeved black t-shirt on top. He paired it with the typical Junin-styled pants, black in color with white bandages tapped at the ankles and black shinobi sandals. Tensing at the unexpected removal of clothes, the blonde shut her eyes, cheeks heating reflexively. Unseen to her, his lips quirked up the tiniest bit in amusement at this show of bashfulness. Feeling a dip in the mattress, she opened her eyes, locking with glowing red orbs that were much closer than before. A pale hand reached out, long fingers, nails painted a dark purple, gently clasped her chin in an action reminiscent of the oldest Uchiha. She jerked her chin away from his loose hold, lips pulling back in a snarl. His calm gaze stayed on her as he moved his hands to her jacket. Naruto thrashed, panicking as he unzipped her jacket and pulled it up towards her chained hands. He pushed it so that it covered her hands and a bit of the chains, completely out of his way. She shivered, feeling cold now that her jacket was gone, and attempted to distract him. "Why you?" she blurted in an attempt to stall his questing hands. Itachi continued to regard her calmly before replying. "For 2 reasons. 1. I can easily hypnotize or subdue you with my Sharingan. 2. Because of my relation to Sasuke. Madara believes you will not harm a child so closely tied to Sasuke," he answered her emotionlessly, intently studying her reaction to the second point. Naruto paled. "He is mistaken in his beliefs," she spat, trying to cover how unsettled she was by the revelation. Itachi's head tilted slightly. "I don't think he is. Your relationship to my Autoto confuses me," he stated, his monotone betraying his claim of confusion. Naruto chose to stay silent, sweat beading at her hairline. "You would allow my child to grow inside you because of your loyalty to my brother?" he questioned, eyebrows furrowing slightly in a rare show of emotion. Naruto frowned, feeling sick at the thought of Itachi's child growing inside her. "You will never be able to understand my real kinship with Sasuke. I see him as a brother more than you ever will," she shouted, glaring angrily. Itachi's lips curled slightly in an amused way and he said nothing more. Instead, returning to the mission at hand, he grabbed her ankles, pulling her knees away from the protective cradle she placed herself in and stretching her body out in a laying position. Pale hands grasped the bottom of her, now baggy, black t-shirt, cold fingers brushing against the warm skin of her abdomen and causing her to shiver. Dragging the t-shirt up to join her jacket, Itachi sat back on his heels, sharing in eyes tracing her exposed flesh. Being a girl of only 16 years old, Naruto was quite developed for her age, her C-cup chest rising and falling rapidly with her panicked breaths. Naruto felt the overwhelming urge to cover herself from those eyes but was helpless to do so. She continued to squirm, only stopping when Itachi straddled her thighs, his weight forcing her legs down. A pale hand cupped her right breast, kneading the soft flesh and causing Naruto to choke on her breath. The other hand joined to play with its twin. Naruto clenched her eyes shut, attempting to distance herself from the molesting. Feeling herself begin to drift into her subconscious, she could only think how the sewer never looked so good before. She was yanked out of her meditation by a harsh pull on her nipple, accompanied by a strange tug in her gut. Her eyes reluctantly met Sharingan, ready to yell her disapproval. Caught in the hypnotizing lull of the spinning tomo, she fought to pull her gaze away. The movements on her chest never stopped, nimble fingers rolling and tweaking her abused flesh. "Don't fight it," he intoned, face emotionless even as he debauched her. Naruto felt shame well up in her, but it was accompanied by the building pressure in her gut and a gush of wetness from between her legs. She grit her teeth, locking up the pleasure-filled sounds that tried to break free from her throat. One hand left her chest, leaving her flesh cold and mourning its absence. The pale hand settled further down, on the waistline of her orange pants, causing her breath to catch. Eyes still locked with hers, the second hand dragged slowly down the valley of her chest, over her ribcage and furiously beating heart, down her stomach, and past her belly button to rest across from the other hand on her pants. Completely foregoing the button and zipper, he slipped the oversized pants over shapely hips, dragging the green frog boxers with them. Removing himself from on top of her, and never once breaking eye contact, he pulled them the rest of the way off, exposing her completely. Naruto's heart raced in fear, the hypnotizing swirl of his Sharingan keeping her from kicking out and fighting as she wanted. Still fully clothed, he returned to the bed, confusing the blonde. Two hands gently grasped her legs, one under each knee, spreading her toned legs. He ran his hands up the soft skin behind her knees and up the backs of her thighs, leaving goosebumps on her flesh. The tomo in his eyes spun twice more before red left her vision. Itachi's eyes settled on the place between her legs, Sharingan staring intently at her naked. Naruto felt her embarrassment and humiliation reach new levels. Choked with emotions, her only protest was an anguished whimper. Red eyes slowly met hers once more and remained locked on her face as a pale hand began its descent to the apex of her thighs. Feeling the hand between her legs, Naruto tensed, only to throw her head back as a rough shinobi calloused finger slid up then down her folds, dragging over a spot that made her gut clench with a vengeance. Being male and star-eyed, Naruto should know all about the female anatomy, especially considering who his sensei of 3 years was. But sadly to say, Naruto is a virgin and managed to maintain his innocence by ignoring Ero Sennin's rambling about the female body. As such, he was taken off guard by just how good Itachi touching him felt. The hand grew bolder, that single finger beginning to repeatedly rub that same spot over and over slowly. Naruto arched, her body twisting in an effort to get away, yet get closer at the same time. Unbidden, small moans and gasps escaped pink lips as the assault on her privates grew. Unexpectedly, she felt another finger press against her, lower down. The blunt sensation giving way as it moved through her wetness before pushing inside. Stiffening at the feeling, Naruto froze. Two fingers pinching that spot distracted her, making her moan loudly. The other finger began to move in and out, making Naruto's breathing pick up. It felt good, really good. If only Naruto was able to forget who was doing this to her, but alas, those Sharingan eyes could only belong to one person. She focused on his stare, trying to ignore the building pressure. It felt awkward, staring at him as he touched her so intimately, but it was her only way of fighting back. She only hoped it was even more awkward for him, but she doubted it. He remained impassive under her stare, and a second finger joined the first inside her, not giving her time to notice before continuing its movements with the first. She quieted her moans, sweating under the combination of the pleasure and her mental efforts to remain silent and look him in the eye. Soon after, the finger rubbing her spot left, joining the other two inside her, his thumb shifting to put pressure right where she needed it. Picking up speed, his thumb alternated between up and down movements and rubbing tight circles. The pressure in her stomach felt almost unbearable, blood dripping down her chin from her effort to remain silent. All of a sudden, the three fingers curled upwards, his thumb pressing down harshly on that spot. She exploded, eyes closing, a silent scream leaving her parted lips as her muscles quivered, thighs closing around his hand as he continued to rub her sensitive flesh. Feeling him move off the bed, she was unable to do anything as her muscles spasmed in an aftershock that she could only liken to being electrified. His silent presence was announced by the dipping of the bed. Strong arms lifted her, pale forearms flexing as he moved her back towards the head of the bed. Feeling hands on her legs, she fought to open her eyes. Unable to fight off the approaching exhaustion, she groaned in helplessness. Her thigh muscles screamed as her legs were spread widely once more, before the feeling of a larger blood pressure against her opening snapped her awake. Eyes flying open, she had the chance to see both hands, one holding her left leg around his naked waist, the other pressing his erection against her. Feeling a scream of terror building, she clenched her mouth shut as he began to push, tearing her apart. She whimpered as a hand grabbed her chin, turning her head to face liquid fire, black tomos spinning furiously. He continued to push before seeming to hit something. Stopping, he retreated, and Naruto blessed every deity possible that he seemed to realize it wouldn't fit. Her thanks were cut off by his harsh thrust, breaking something inside her and causing pain to travel through her body like blood in her veins from the spot where his body joined hers. Tears dripped from her closed eyes, the wound on her lip reopening. He had stopped moving, causing her to almost cry in relief, but she just wanted him out. She didn't want this. The hand on her face moved, wiping the tears on her whiskered cheeks and brushing under her tightly clenched eyes. Letting out a small whimper of pain when she flinched away from him, she forced her body to still under his caresses. A soft, wet heat covered her mouth, causing her eyes to snap open in surprise. Sharingan orbs stared inches from her own wide blue ones. Lips moved fluidly over her own, a silken tongue slipping past her lax lips to plunder her mouth possessively. Pale lashes fluttered shut as the kiss continued, wrists pulling at the chains in her sudden desire to touch him. She wanted to run her hands over that pale flesh and pull him closer. The loud clang of the chains caused her to freeze, mouth stilling under his and body tensing up. Ripping her mouth away, she turned her head away from him, her whole body jerking with the sharp movement and causing him to slide slightly out of her, making him release her leg in the process. He tensed above her before shifting his hips and sheathing himself once more. Naruto's breath left her at the sensation, and she had no time to recover as he continued his slow thrusts. Gasping for air, she looked up to his face, noting the furrow of his brows and harsh line of his mouth. Her belly tightened once more and she began unconsciously rocking her hips against him, the flutter beginning to grow with each slide of her body against his. Her legs pushed off the bed, coming to wrap tightly around his hips. A moan escaping her mouth as the angle made him slide impossibly deeper. His thrusts picked up speed, making Naruto toss her head to the side, eyes resting on his clenched hand, purple nails digging into the bed, arm muscles taut from holding his body above her own small one. She moaned again, rolling her hips to meet him and keening when that spot rubbed against the coarse line of hair leading from his belly button to his erection. Harder, she groaned, causing him to slam into her repeatedly, the bed sliding against the floor and the chains rattling loudly from the force of his thrusts. She could feel the familiar explosion so close. Delirious with desire, she wished her arms were free so she could touch him, or better yet touch that spot that he wasn't touching enough right now. She wanted his lips on her again, his tongue in her mouth possessing her. He shifted his hips, sitting back on his feet and lifting her legs higher up his waist. Slamming in once more, the pressure in her body exploding as he hit a spot so deep inside her, while simultaneously grinding his pubic hair against that spot. She screamed as she came, her walls tightening around him. Her eyes were locked on his face, sweaty bangs clinging to high aristocratic cheekbones flushed from the heat. His eyes shifted then, flickering to the same coal black as his brother. His mouth opened in a silent groan before he thrusted twice more, leaning down to attach his teeth to the base of her neck and biting down. Naruto moaned at the pleasure, pain, feeling a strange pressure inside of her as something filled her. He collapsed bonelessly, using his arm to push off so he landed heavily on his back next to her. She drifted off to sleep, inky black eyes invading her mind. "You've done it now," came the growling voice of the Biju. She groaned miserably in reply, just wanting to sleep. "You let that Uchiha make you with barely any fight at all." "I take it back, I like him even less than the traitorous Uchiha brat," he growled, the hot waft of his breath causing Naruto to stir. "While I admire his skill at running, you literally rolled over and begged like a bitch in heat," he snarled, ignoring Naruto's "hey" of offense. "That fertility drug was unexpected on my part, a very foolish error that lies on me alone. Had I thought of it, I could have countered it by heating your blood so it would burn the drug out of your system like a poison. His filthy Uchiha sperm is now impregnating you as we speak," roared the fox, radiating hostility at the situation they seemed stuck in. Naruto's eyes widened and she cursed like a sailor, making the fox glare at her. "I will let this go as we knew pregnancy was inevitable. Your lack of restraint has displeased me though. You were unexperienced, so it will serve as your lesson. Do not let yourself succumb to his flirtations again. I will rid us of the fetus once it sets in your womb," he added, harsh eyes falling on Naruto. Her eyes widened. "The baby? You can't," she yelled, struggling to her feet. Kyuubi growled, fixing her with a hard stare. "Your affection for that Uchiha is unfounded. He would sooner kill you than look at you as an ally." "You would forsake the shinobi world for a child of his relations?" spat the fox in disgust. Naruto frowned, wrapping her arms around herself. "Do we need to kill the baby?" she asked in a small voice, quickening to explain when he flashed some fang at her. "I mean, if you kill the child they will just do this again. How many must we kill before you are able to find an escape? I purpose we leave the child so that they leave us alone and underestimate us. Surely the great Kyuubi can think of a plan where we keep the baby and escape," she added, in a stronger voice. Kyuubi growled. "Leave me to think. This has drastically changed things," he grumbled, unwilling to admit that his host was right. Naruto smiled with relief. "Thank you, Kyuubi. I don't know what I'd do without you," she exclaimed. The fox huffed moodily before she was forcefully pushed from their mindscape. Waking up, Naruto found herself redressed and alone. The cave was much darker now, a chill seeming to set in. Testing her restraints, she winced when each tug proved fruitless. She kicked her legs angrily, tensing at the soreness that radiated from the apex of her thighs. Her face flushed a humiliated bright red and she forced herself to remember Kyuubi's words. Eyes brightening with determination, she cast her mind away from the mysterious Uchiha who deflowered her and onto thinking about how to escape the one who captured her. Closing her eyes, she set to thinking. Gathering her thoughts, she concluded that she needed chakra to escape but was unable to use hers outside of her body. Her strength and taijutsu also suffered from the jutsu cast upon her, her limbs now shorter and less muscled. Stuck as a woman, and it would only get worse as she grew with child. Surely she could come up with a way to at least fix her taijutsu problems. She decided to think like a woman, her mind conjuring up an image of one of the strongest kunoichi ever, the first and only woman to become Hokage, her Ba-chan, Senju Tsunade of the Sannin. As a woman, Granny is genetically at a disadvantage against stronger men, but she easily beats up Ero Sennin with pure physical strength. He remembered her explaining that she uses chakra to augment her strength and muscles. "That's it," exclaimed Kyuubi, voice almost giddy. Naruto frowned at having her thoughts interrupted but pushed it away to focus on the fox. The collar doesn't restrain the internal use of chakra. Strength augmentation is the internal process of using chakra to strengthen your muscles. It can also be used to augment speed at ungodly levels parallel to that of your father's Horashin jutsu, he explained in a rushed manner. Naruto's eyes widened before she grinned. "Let's do it, Datbeo," she exclaimed, feeling hope for the first time since Kyuubi told her she was captured by the Akatsuki. Kyuubi frowned. "It's not that easy, brat. It requires extreme chakra control. Your control is abysmal. It would take years to gain the level of control needed for strength and speed augmentation," he stated, making Naruto deflate like a balloon. Growing mad, the blonde glared at him. Then how does chakra augmentation help us? I don't have years, this baby will be born in 9 months, she yelled, feeling hopeless. Kyuubi growled. Lucky for you, you have my help. I estimate by the 5th or 6th month of your pregnancy you should have the control needed to complete these techniques and escape. You will use strength augmentation to break the chains and sneak out. Your best bet is to break the wall and use speed augmentation to get far away. Even these techniques won't help you long against an S-ranked missing nin. The good thing is the chakra color suppresses you chakra, so any sensory types will not be able to track you. You need to run to a safe place to hide and have the baby. Konoha would not take kindly to you returning pregnant with Uchiha Itachi, the clanslayer's baby, he explained in an excited rush. Naruto frowned. 6 months? She asked morosely. Kyuubi frowned deeply at his depressed container. 5 or 6 months, which is little compared to how long it would take someone with the amount of chakra you possess to get their chakra control to that level normally. That Senju woman started with a smaller reserve and very good control, so all she had to do was expand her reserves and maintain her control. Think of your pink-haired teammate. When you were doing the tree climbing exercise, what was it your sensei said? He questioned expectantly. Naruto furrowed her brows in thought. Kakashi sensei said that girls have a smaller chakra reserve and better control, she answered, grinning. Kyuubi nodded, but that's not the case with you. Even without adding my chakra you have a tremendous amount of your own. A result of the unique Uzumaki chakra and vitality, he added, making Naruto's grin disappear. We have to train your chakra control. This will be very hard compared to tree climbing as it must all be done internally. We will start by trying to forcefully speed up the chakra in its natural flow through your body. Then we will work on directing chakra to different parts of your body. After that you will focus on gathering varying amounts of chakra to body parts, one request at random. Finally you will try to reverse your chakra flow without killing yourself, Kyuubi stated, making Naruto's eyes widen comically. To be done in the time limit I have given you, you must start immediately, brat. You learned how to feel chakra and direct it to your feet in a steady and changing motion for the tree and water exercises. This time around you must focus on your chakra as a whole and follow its natural path. Once you get an understanding of its path you must use chakra control to guide its movements at a faster pace through your chakra pathways. Concentration is key, you cannot waver. Track the flow of your chakra and speed its circulation, he explained, regarding Naruto seriously. Naruto nodded, sitting in the lotus position, closing her eyes, and bringing her hands up in the tiger seal. We have to train your chakra control. This will be very hard compared to tree climbing as it must all be done internally. We will start by trying to forcefully speed up the chakra in its natural flow through your body. Then we will work on directing chakra to different parts of your body. After that you will focus on gathering varying amounts of chakra to body parts, one request at random. Finally you will try to reverse your chakra flow without killing yourself, Kyuubi stated, making Naruto's eyes widen comically. To be done in the time limit I have given you, you must start immediately, brat. You learned how to feel chakra and direct it to your feet in a steady and changing motion for the tree and water exercises. This time around you must focus on your chakra as a whole and follow its natural path. Once you get an understanding of its path you must use chakra control to guide its movements at a faster pace through your chakra pathways. Concentration is key, you cannot waver. Track the flow of your chakra and speed its circulation, he explained, regarding Naruto seriously. Naruto nodded, sitting in the lotus position, closing her eyes, and bringing her hands up in the tiger seal. The blonde spent hours sitting in the same position. Her legs had begun to hurt and her wrists felt raw under the chains that she had stretched to make her hand seal. Kyuubi had quit trying to give her advice after an hour and instead left her to practice on her own. Despite her sore body, hungry belly, and overall uncomfortable situation as a captive, she attempted to focus only on her chakra network. It was very hard, yet fighting for not only the safety of yourself, but the safety of your unborn child as well made a very good motivator. Despite Kyuubi's precise and lengthy explanation, this was proving to be difficult. Kyuubi had estimated 5 or 6 months to complete the training, with 3 parts to the training that gave her roughly 3 months to complete each section. It all sounds nice and logical put like that, But she really did not like the thought of staying here for 6 months and had foolishly hoped to speed through the process. She cursed at not being able to use her shadow clones. With clone training she could probably finish the whole training in weeks. At the same time, with use of her chakra this training would be unnecessary in the first place. The blonde had easily found her chakra. Once you learn to access your chakra in the academy, your chakra is as much a part of your body as your left arm. It's familiar and right there. The difficult part was in focusing on each individual chakra pathway instead of seeing her chakra as a huge unrestrained mass as she usually did. Having as much chakra as she did was both a blessing and a curse. Grandma Tsunade had once told her that normal people have one chakra source in their chest. Their chakra develops there and flows throughout their body via their chakra network. The chakra network is made up of chakra pathways and chakra points. The Hyuga are able to see this whole network with their Byakugan and even strike chakra points to close off chakra pathways and prevent a shinobi from using their chakra. Keeping in mind Naruto's method of learning, Tsunade chose to use a diagram of a chakra network and explain it from a Hyuga point of view. Not only does Naruto have the source of her own massive chakra in her chest, but Kyuubi's even larger chakra output at the seal in her stomach. She continued to explain that despite not having Byakugan, people with excellent chakra control are aware of every chakra pathway and point in their body. This is a part of the reason why you need excellent control to become a medical ninja. Following this logic, Naruto had decided to start at her chakra's focal point, her chest, and try to follow it from there. Needless to say, this was unsuccessful. Naruto huffed in frustration, releasing her tiger seal and taking a deep breath. After sitting peacefully for a few minutes, she readied herself to continue when she heard a noise. She turned her head to stare intently at the door, hearing clearly now approaching footsteps. She struggled with her numb legs out of her sitting position before laying down on the bed and pretending to sleep. Like any good shinobi, she evened out her breathing and kept still so as not to give it away. Internally she freaked out. What would she do? What if it was Itachi? What if he? The door opened and the footsteps stopped at the edge of the bed. Naruto was positively filled with fear. She desperately called for Kyuubi and the fox was attentive right away. She had only a moment to feel reassured and thankful for her furry companion, before a hand roughly shook her shoulder to wake her up. Naruto didn't bother to pretend to wake up slowly. Shinobi never woke up slowly and slept very lightly, it was something you learned very early. She turned to face the intruder and didn't know whether to sigh in relief or scream in fear at the sight of Madara's masked face. Itachi must have really worn you out, he stated with amusement, laughing cruelly when Naruto flinched at Itachi's name. How I wish I was able to watch, he added regretfully. Naruto glared hatefully at him. The man chuckled darkly once more before compsing himself. I'm here to introduce your caretaker for your stay, he stated pleasantly, as if Naruto was on a vacation. At these words, a second figure entered the room. To Naruto's relief, it wasn't any Akatsuki member she knew, it was a blue-haired female. The woman had dark blue hair, not black blue like Sasuke's but a literal royal blue. She had an origami flower in her hair and sharp golden-colored eyes. Her skin was very pale and she came off as unapproachable but beautiful nonetheless. She had a piercing in her chin, just under her lower lip, and her form was covered in the signature cloak. The only other thing Naruto noticed about her appearance were the shinobi sandals that adorned her feet, black painted nails, both toe and finger, and her lack of identifying village forehead protector. The woman seemed to be studying her as well, and Naruto faintly wondered if the woman was aware of her gender change and if so what she thought about it. This is Conan. She will bring your daily meals and in a couple weeks she will check if you are pregnant or not. She has basic medical ninja skills and will be the only other person you see until we send for a medical ninja once you are in your second trimester, stated Madara, bringing Naruto from her thoughts. With this said, he turned and left, the woman Conan following him. Naruto released a heavy breath but sharply drew in another when Conan swiftly reappeared. The blue-haired woman set a tray on her bed and left just as swiftly as she came. Naruto eyed the tray, rice with some kind of cooked meat and vegetable, a bun and a cup of water. She shrugged and set to eating, deciding to go over what Madara told her. Based on his explanation, she now had a reassurance that she would at least be fed daily, Not that she had any worries about that before considering his ultimate goal. She had a couple weeks until they would know that she was definitely pregnant. The best part being the, she will be the only other person you see, part. Meaning she will not see either Madara or Itachi. She felt a deep sense of relief at the first and relief mixed with a small bit of disappointment at the second. Not only that, but her first trimester was over after month 3, meaning she would have a medic then. She idly wondered where they would find one before writing it off as unimportant at the moment. She went back to her previous thought. Just why would she feel disappointment, no matter how small, at not seeing Itachi? Ridiculous. He pretty much raped her despite how active a participant she was later on. Fact 1, she was chained down and definitely fought to show her resistance. Fact 2, he used a genjutsu to subdue her and only released it when she was so overcome with pleasure she wouldn't fight. Rape is rape, simple as that. Kyuubi's earlier accusation came back to her and she blushed before scowling. Bitch and heat indeed. She vaguely remembered ordering him to go harder. If that didn't show how much she enjoyed it, maybe the loud scream at the end would. She scowled angrily, tearing into her bun with her teeth. She wondered just what his motivation was. Surely you wouldn't do something like that just because your leader ordered you to, would you? Maybe because he's a guy? She heard guys are crazed. Yet she didn't remember ever being like that herself, and despite the proof of it, still found it awkward to imagine Itachi having. Her scowl grew in intensity. It's as bad as imagining Sasuke Teme having, antisocial bastards that they both were. Pretending that she believed that he was just following orders. Was he really okay with Madara making him sire a child with her? Was he cool with ending up with a child since according to plans she was going to be dead? Didn't he pretty much kill off his own clan? Why would he want to make Uchiha babies then? She shivered in disgust at the term before continuing on. Even only on musing his thoughts, she disliked the thought that her child would be without her, furthermore, with Itachi as his or her lone parent. The man was a child soldier, what would he know of raising a child? Sure, she didn't have much knowledge on child rearing either, being an orphan, and the Kyuubi Jinchuriki left her without much child interaction. Still, she knew how to love. She didn't think Itachi did. Frowning sadly at the thought, she brushed off the little thought of, what about Sasuke? Why leave him alive? Because she couldn't even begin to contemplate Itachi loving Sasuke. She shivered. You don't do that to someone you love. In a way, she thinks maybe if he loved Sasuke, he should have let him die with the rest of his family before immediately feeling horrible for considering it. She definitely doesn't wish Sasuke died with his clan, but looking at his life, she couldn't help but wonder if Sasuke sometimes wished that. What it must be like, having the burden of avenging the massacre of your whole clan on your shoulders. It must be a very heavy burden, no burden an 8-year-old boy should be left with. These thoughts of Sasuke have left her depressed, and she pushes her empty tray away, the food settling heavily in her stomach. Clearing her mind of all thoughts and worries, she sets back to task, focusing on her start point and attempting to follow each chakra pathway chakra point by point. It is exactly 2 weeks later that Naruto is able to successfully follow her chakra flow throughout her entire body at its regular speed. She knows it's been 2 weeks by counting her meals. 3 a day with the exception of the first day. It is also exactly 2 weeks later that after bringing Naruto breakfast, Conan does not leave. I will now check if you are pregnant, the blue-haired woman explains, and Naruto marvels at hearing her voice for the first time. It is low and sultry, not at all what Naruto imagined in her daily musings. The Akatsuki member approaches Naruto's laid-out form and her hand light up with green healing chakra. Naruto chooses to say and do nothing, allowing the woman to place her hands a few inches above her lower abdomen. Conan's hands scan Naruto's lower abdomen once, twice, then 3 times before the green glow of her healing chakra dissipates. She says not a word to Naruto before turning and leaving the room. This is completely fine to Naruto, who already knows she is pregnant. The day passes by without any more unusual occurrences, and Naruto is secretly grateful that Madara did not decide to visit. A month after that, Naruto completes the process of speeding up her chakra circulation. It is a full month and a half ahead of schedule, and Kyuubi praises her endlessly. Naruto is too happy to even tease the fox for being so out of character. Instead, she listens intently as Kyuubi explains the second part in detail. This is where you will learn to direct your chakra in varying amounts, to different parts of your body and then different chakra points. The hardest part will be directing chakra to the parts furthest from you, chakra's focal point, minus feet. So head, hands, arms, and legs. Focusing on only a specific point will be even harder yet. After you complete body parts, one will have to teach you the names and corresponding points for each of the 361 chakra points in your body. Then you will learn to direct varying amounts of chakra to each one. This part of the training is necessary for the speed part of chakra augmentation. Speed augmentation is something that the Senju woman and pink-haired girl are unable to use. They may have excellent chakra control but do not have the knowledge on where and how to use chakra to supplement speed. Start with directing chakra to your feet as a warm-up and then try your legs, Kyuubi explained, taking on a lecture-like tone. Naruto listened with rapture, none of her usual disobedience to learning. It was pretty unbelievable. If only she had shown this dedication in the academy. So part 2 began. A month and a half later and Naruto had accomplished directing chakra to all of her body parts in varying amounts and most of her tenketsu or chakra points. Despite all of this, she could only focus on the fact that her first trimester was now finished. This month and a half had also brought with it Naruto's first conversation with Conan. After 2 months, Naruto decided to talk to Conan. She had 3 reasons for this. Reason 1. She needed something else to focus on besides training or she would lose it. Reason 2. She hadn't spoken in 2 months out loud and she needed her voice in working condition. Reason 3. To gather information, unlikely as that was to happen. So at the end of the 2nd month she decided to strike up a conversation. It was, predictably, a fail. Being quite out of practice with talking to humans, her opening line was a simple, "Hey." She decided to blame this failure on Conan as quite obviously, the woman was an antisocial bastard like Sasuke. Conan hadn't even spared her a look before turning to leave. Naruto's solution was to talk about any and every inconsequential thing she could think of when Conan delivered her meals. She did this for 2 weeks until she finally got a reaction from the stoic woman. She had been ranting about a time during training when Ero Sennin had left her alone to learn a B-ranked Kaiden jutsu. Specifically Kaiden Goryuka no Jutsu, otherwise known as Fire Release, Dragon Fireball Jutsu. When using this jutsu, the user compresses a large amount of chakra built up inside their body and changes it into a dragon head-shaped fireball. The user then skillfully manipulates that great fire and attacks their opponent. So as the story goes, in a typical Ero Sennin manner, he ditches Naruto for his research. Using clone training, which Jiraiya had explained to him at the beginning of their training trip, Naruto completes it in 2 hours. He tracks down Ero Sennin in the small village somewhere in the land of Earth. The pervert is predictably at a whorehouse in the small village's even smaller red light district. He uses henge to turn into a beautiful, young violet-haired woman. Stacked on top like his usual waijutsu and dressed in an elegant lavender kimono. He bustles into the rundown shack, capturing the attention of every male in there. He poses as the daughter of a traveling merchant and asks for directions to the inn that he and Ero Sennin are staying at. Perfectly planned, the pervert offers to generously escort his disguised self there. On the way, Jiraiya unfortunately falls into a trap Naruto set. Still in disguise, Naruto quickly does the single-hand seal to the Dragon Fireball Jutsu, Tiger, and envelopes his teacher's white hair in dragon-shaped flames. He then laughs uproariously, henge dispelling, rolling on the ground crying from laughter as the man summons Gamakiri and orders the frog to do a water jutsu on his hair. The effeminate frog spits a torpedo of water at Jiraiya, who goes flying back through the whorehouse's decrepit wall. Needless to say, the man was incensed. His butt-length hair had been scorched to shoulder length. Unfortunately for Naruto, he used a hair jutsu to grow it back, then put Naruto through training hell for the next 2 weeks. Conan's reaction, a small husky laugh that caused Naruto to pause partway through the retelling in surprise before continuing with gusto. After this occasion, Naruto chooses to tell more stories about Ero Sennin and is occasionally graced with another small laugh or quirk of the lips. These small interactions make Naruto feel a little more relaxed. Talking about her grandfather figure and laughing makes the weight on her shoulders much easier to bear. Month 4 of her pregnancy has just begun, and with it Madara returns. He enters the room, examining the blonde's dirty clothes and messy hair. She wants to shout that sponge baths once a week will do that to you. His examination makes her uncomfortable, but she stays silent. When he speaks, his tone is calm. Conan will take you for a proper bath and change of clothes. Your medic will be here in a few hours. Do not try anything because you will not like what I do, he explains, voice turning to steel at the end. Naruto says nothing but sends him a glare. He takes this as a challenge and elaborates, there are many things I can do to you that won't hurt the baby. He says almost nonchalantly before adding, I could still take pleasure in your body. Naruto's eyes snap to the floor, glare gone and stomach in her throat. She is effectively subdued. Her distress is evident to him and he chuckles darkly. I should feel insulted at your reaction, he states, but his tone is amused and gloating. With an audible air of satisfaction around him, he leaves the room. Naruto does not move from her curled-up position though she hears Conan enter. Stoic as she may be, Naruto can read from Conan's face that she heard the entire exchange. The older woman attempts to cover her disgust at her leader's words and releases Naruto from her chains using a jutsu. Naruto weakly stumbles to her feet, leaning against the blue-haired woman, and Conan coaxes her along gently and without comment. The shower feels heavenly. Naruto does not want it to end, but knows it will sooner than she'd like. Her hair had grown long since the transformation and even longer over the months past, reaching to the small of her back in a greasy tangle of locks. She washes it 3 times, then uses much of the conditioner it. She leaves it and continues to thoroughly scrub every inch of her body. She rinses her hair and body before turning off the water and stepping out. She dries and dresses in the loose white dress and panties. She uses the provided toothbrush and toothpaste. Conan returns just as she's finishing and gestures to the hairbrush questioningly. Naruto nods without hesitation and the older woman sets to combing her locks, then elaborately braiding her hide back and tying it off with a hair tie. Naruto smiles at her reflection and through the mirror, catches the barely noticeable twitch of Conan's lips. They do not return to her room. Instead, she is led to a new room. It looks less cave-like and more room-like. There is a carpet on the floor in an attempt to stave off the cool feel of stone. A larger bed with sheets, thick blankets and a pile of pillows. She spies a small bathroom to the side with a tiny shower, sink and toilet. She feels a rush of joy. Chamber pots are not fun, neither are sponge baths. There is a dresser and mirror complete with a small chair and table. Conan places the toothbrush, toothpaste, and hairbrush on the dresser. Naruto didn't even notice her grab them. The blonde is literally awestruck at the room after 3 months of her cell. She slowly turns back to the blue-haired woman and bows in thanks, unable to say anything. She fights off the tears, blaming it on her pregnancy hormones. Surprisingly, Conan nods back. I will not be your caretaker any longer. Madara has found a suitable medic who will take over bringing your meals, she states, and Naruto is flooded with sadness. Enemy or not, the woman's small acts of kindness meant the world to Naruto during such a desolate time. Naruto gathers her wits before replying. Thank you for taking care of me and listening to my stories. Goodbye, she says with another formal bow of gratitude. Conan lets out a tiny smile and bows back just as formal. Her goodbye floats back as she closes the room, and Naruto knows she will miss Conan's husky voice. Naruto doesn't know how long she laid there in her new room sulking over Conan's loss and worrying about her new med nin, but she is startled into awareness abruptly. Just in time too, because in walks Madara. She almost wishes to return to her former state of uncleanliness, because when he looks at her this time it's with appraising eyes. He scans her openly, from her beautifully braided golden locks to the tips of her feet. She is very self-conscious of the fact that she is sprawled out on a bed and thinks that he might take it as an invitation to go through with his earlier threat. She tenses minutely but makes sure to not show any outward sign that could be taken as hostility. From the look in his eyes she knows he would like any reason to take advantage of her, and when he finally meets her eyes, it's with a disappointed air. Inwardly she fumes, but outwardly, she drops her eyes and waits silently. Your new medic is here. Do not misbehave or this room and everything else will be taken away, he states. Naruto has no plans of misbehaving because in the back of her mind his threat is still echoing. He seems to know this too, and satisfied he turns and leaves. Quickly she sits up, watching the door expectantly. A woman walks through and Naruto's first thought is that she is nothing like Conan. The woman is petite and plump, the complete opposite to Conan's tall and slim build. She is also, very obviously, civilian. Naruto can tell that the woman is not a fighter. Her body is soft and lacking the muscles of an active kunoichi. She concludes that the woman is either a civilian midwife or was strictly trained in medical jutsu and if so, is nowhere near the level of Sakura let alone Tsunade Bakken. The woman seems to be in her late 30s. She has light brown hair cut into a short, asymmetrical bob with dark brown eyes. Overall her coloring is quite plain in comparison to Conan's royal blue hair and golden eyes. She has tanned skin, darker than Naruto's own golden tone. She is dressed in a plain black dress, shoes and carrying an equally plain bag which Naruto assumed held her medical instruments. Naruto does not speak and the woman fidgets nervously. "My name is Sachiko," she stutters nervously. Line break. The woman is very meek, as she asks Naruto questions about her pregnancy. "When do you think you conceived? Last menstruation? How far along do you think you are?" Naruto answers as best as she can. "I know I conceived a little over 3 months ago. I was a virgin." "I don't know. This is the beginning of the 4th month, the 13th week." Sachiko's hands are cold as she asks Naruto to lift her dress and feels different spots on her abdomen. Naruto is relieved when she declares her exam finished. They sit in silence once more before the woman break. Naruto finds out that Sachiko is, in fact, a civilian midwife who Kisame kidnapped from the nearest town. Unfortunately, she isn't told the name of that town and has no further lead on where the base is. Madara made sure to tell Sachiko not to tell Naruto anything. Actually, he told her not to talk to Naruto at all. Naruto thinks the woman very stupid for disobeying and talking to her but cannot complain. She reluctantly admits that being civilian, the woman is most likely very scared and only trying to ease her fears. On the other hand, her civilian status ensures she has no idea just what Madara is capable of, so his threats are not as fear-inducing as they would be to Naruto. She spills what seems her whole life story and despite a twinge of pity Naruto is largely unmoved. Yes, Kisame is quite frightening and it's horrible that he threatened to cut up her husband if she didn't go with him. But he once threatened to cut off one of her arms or legs and she was only 12 years old. Then comes the tears and Naruto sits there awkwardly, not knowing what to do. She feels more sad that she doesn't really care than she does about the woman's weeping. She wonders if this horrible situation has hardened her to such a point or if she is unable to feel sorry for anyone other than herself. Soon Sachiko stops crying and Naruto almost sighs in relief. Not long after Kisame comes to get the midwife. This is the first time she has seen Kisame since she's been captured. He looks exactly the same. Samahada is strapped onto his back and he grins revealing sharp pointed teeth. He eyes Naruto and bursts into laughter. Sachiko lets out a whimper at this but she is ignored by both ninja. Naruto stares back blankly. "That's a good look for you, brat," he croons, chuckling once more. At once he shifts moods in a creepy, mercurial way. "Let's go, woman," he states in a bored tone. The way Sachiko leaps up and quickly stumbles after him, almost as if she was threatened, makes him smirk. He sends one more vicious grin Naruto's way. "See you tomorrow for your checkup," he says, and there is a cruel enjoyment there that reminds Naruto of a horror movie she was forced to see with Kiba. Being an extreme coward for all things supernatural or scary, she or rather he at the time, had screamed bloody murder all throughout the movie much to Kiba's amusement. The plot was about a kindly doctor who kidnapped people by night and tortured them. He had trouble sleeping that night and ended up being lectured by Kakashi-sensei the next day, when he managed to fall inside the river they were cleaning garbage out of as a D-ranked mission. Naruto shivered and exhaled loudly once the door closed behind them. She turned and curled into a ball, wiggling under the heavy covers. Halfway through the 4th month there are some developments. Naruto finished part 2 of her training. She is able to send small or large amounts of chakra to any chakra point Kyuubi asks her to. Before she can start the final part of training, she is interrupted by the arrival of lunch, Sachiko, and Kisame. The past 2 weeks Kisame has said very little to Naruto. He seems to limit himself to creepy chuckling, sharp-toothed grins and condescending smirks in no particular order. Sachiko gets to work on her daily exam. Naruto is quite used to it by now and even finds it pleasant. Sachiko has spent their time together over the last 2 weeks explaining each stage of pregnancy, the baby's development and general random bits of baby delivery and care that Naruto soaks up like a sponge. It is today that they both notice a baby bump and Naruto is unable to remove her hand from it even after Sachiko leaves. This is the first time that Naruto feels like the baby is actually real and it fills her with warmth. Line break. The next morning she asks Kyuubi to explain the third part of her training. His voice is welcoming to her. Since the appearance of Sachiko he hasn't spoken to her very much at all. Idly she wonders if he was talking to her so much before out of worry for her mental state and only stoked now that she has someone else to talk to. She thinks that's sweet, but it's more likely that he's just being his normal grumpy self. Before I explain the third part, I'd like to give you some news. I don't know if it's good or bad, I'll leave that to you to decide. The fertility potion had the side effect of giving you a multiple birth, he stated. Naruto frowned. Multiple birth. She was definitely feeling overwhelmed. Kyuubi's dark chuckle floated through her mind and her frown deepened, worry growing. No, you will not be an octo-mom. Where did you even learn that term? Regardless, congratulations, you are the soon-to-be mommy of triplets, he clarified, making her relax slightly but not much. Wow, I don't even know how to care for one and I'm going to have 3, she mumbled. Kyuubi chuckled once more. More specifically, 2 sons and a daughter. 3 little kids, he deadpanned, endlessly amused by Naruto's worry. 2 boys and a girl, she repeated, completely awed. She pushed her worry aside. I'll protect them with everything I have, she vowed. We both will, kid, and on that note I'll finish explaining. Since your medic is civilian, she has no way of scanning to check for multiple births, and despite having 3 meals a day you are very underweight for someone who is carrying 3 children. The kits are fine, but once we escape you will need to eat a lot more to compensate. Maybe ask your midwife to request more food. It won't be near enough, but it will help some. It's best not to mention that you are having a multiple birth. They will be searching for a woman and baby when we escape, not a woman with 3 babies, Kyuubi explained wisely, his logic easily making Naruto agree. Alright, I'll ask her. Just say I'm always still hungry after meals and hope she grows enough balls to tell Kisame, she replied, rolling her eyes. Not everyone is as fearless as you, he retorted, making Naruto snort. Where have you been the last 4.5 months? Me, fearless, as if, she muttered bitterly. Where I always have been, right here. Yes, you. Not many can go through what you have, let alone having had your gender changed on top of that. Do you honestly think anyone else could accept having their changed instantaneously? Your ability to prioritize and struggle on no matter what has been a quality that I have always admired about you, replied the Biju. Naruto burst into tears at this. Thanks, Kyuubi, for everything, she whispered quietly, wiping stubbornly at her tears. Enough of this heart-to-heart stuff, the demon muttered harshly, but Naruto could sense how embarrassed and uncomfortable he was. The third part of your training is to stop and reverse the flow of your chakra. The reason it is the final stage and not the second is because you need all of the skills you learned in the second stage to do this. You have to use every bit of control you've amassed to stop your chakra flow, then change its direction. It is very difficult and much harder than it sounds. A bit of warning, do not stop your chakra flow for very long or it could be fatal. You can only stop it for a few minutes at most. If you are still unable to reverse the flow of your chakra, then restart your chakra flow and try again. That's all I can tell you about this stage. Good luck, he explained. Naruto nodded. Alright, thanks Kyuubi, she stated, getting ready to start her training. Line break. It takes a month for her to learn how to stop her chakra flow. 4 weeks, she's now halfway through the 5th month. Naruto worries that she won't be able to leave after 5 months and might have to wait the full 6. This thought depresses her, but she uses the depression as motivation. Sachiko, surprisingly, takes the care of her patients very seriously and has eventually asked Kisame to feed her more. For the past month she has been getting 4 meals a day and her meals are slightly bigger. Her stomach has grown significantly, but not quite to the point where Sachiko will get suspicious about multiple births. Naruto has learned quite a bit about what to expect for the rest of her pregnancy, milking Sachiko for all the information she can before she escapes. She wonders what they will do to the midwife after she escapes. Dachi brushes the thought aside. She can't afford to feel sorry or guilty. Her babies are her first priority. The end of the month comes and she's still unable to reverse her chakra flow. Her anger at this gives her enough of a boost to complete her training the 3rd day of her 6th month. She uses the next day to rest and plan. She decides the perfect time to make her escape is after dinner. The gap between dinner and breakfast the next day offers her the most time to get away, that is if they don't hear her jailbreak. If she successfully leaves after dinner they won't notice that she's gone until the next morning. After breakfast she plans extensively with Kyuubi. She asks him to explain the process of strength and speed augmentation so many times that he quickly grows annoyed and ignores her. It doesn't matter because she already know the words off by heart. To use strength augmentation you simply focus chakra to the arms or legs depending on whether you want to punch or kick something. To use speed augmentation you must focus chakra to the chakra points in your legs in bursts. The effect is almost like a shunshin, the teleporting technique that Kakashi Sensei and most Junin know, or the Hiraishin, flying thunder god technique, that the Yondaime Hokage uses. Instead of the straight run you would have with natural speed. Each burst takes you a certain distance depending on how much chakra you use almost instantaneously. If someone was able to slow it down and watch a person would seem to flicker down the road. For example you could be on the Hokage tower, use a small burst and be outside of the village gates the next second. It accomplishes exactly what the Hiraishin does except it does not require the use of a seal because you are not transported to another dimension. The only downside is with Hiraishin you can control where you go but using this you have no idea where you will end up. Theoretically, with practice you should eventually be able to know exactly how much chakra you need to go a certain distance. Unless you know how far you need to go to get to where you want to be, x 20 kilometers to Suna, then you could end up anywhere. She goes over each step in her head after her pre-lunch meal. When Kisame and Sachiko appear with lunch she is taken by surprise. Luckily neither notices. She suffers through her exam and asks any last questions she can think of for the midwife. She does her very best to act normal and when Kisame returns she easily crushes the urge to smirk at him. Immature as she may have been she was not going to ruin everything for a smirk. Maybe she had grown up, maybe girls really are more mature, or maybe it was her mother instincts. Once they leave she decides to take a shower. She thoroughly cleans herself and dresses in a cutesy pink and white maternity dress. She detests the color but imagines that she looks very innocent and in need of help in such a dress. She puts her hair up in a messy bun and lays back in wait of dinner. She can sense that Kyuubi is just as excited and has to contain a grin. Soon enough dinner has come she devours it. Unfortunately there aren't any shoes except for the slippers she has and she can't find a coat. She does find a long, coat-like fleece sweater though. It's white and has a belt that she can tie it closed with. She leaves the slippers, choosing to go bare feet and adds a pair of pants on underneath her long dress just to be safe. After 5 months and 4 days she is finally ready to escape from the Akatsuki. Naruto wishes she could return to Konoha but knows she can't. She has no worries about them harming her children. She knows that if anyone has any complaints about it her Ba-chan would easily take care of it. The council would probably shit bricks to get some loyal Uchihas in the village regardless of who their father may be. No, the reason she can't return is this: it's too predictable. Konoha will be the first place they look and although she wants nothing more than to be there to defend her village when they attack, she knows she can't. At this point the best thing is to stay away for the sake of her unborn children. In 2 more months she will be at the point where using chakra will be fatal for the babies. Konoha is out and so is every other hidden village. She doesn't want to risk running into someone she knows, being found out as a shinobi or even being noticed. Shinobi are very suspicious and attentive, with good reason. So it's decided some small village or nature dwelling would be the perfect hideout. So the plan is to get far away. During her travels with Ero-Sennin Naruto learned a lot about geography. She has many options of places to hide throughout the elemental nations. She casts those worries aside and instead focuses on the wall. Using her Kyuubi enhanced senses she guessed which wall lead to the outside. Lucky for her one does. Her last room must have been deeper in the cave because she couldn't hear any noises to indicate it was close to the outside. If she presses her ear against the back wall where her bed is at night she can hear the faint sounds of insects and wind. During the morning she can clearly hear birds. With a determined gleam Naruto stops in front of the back wall and raises her fist. So the plan is to get far away. During her travels with Ero-Sennin Naruto learned a lot about geography. She has many options of places to hide throughout the elemental nations. She casts those worries aside and instead focuses on the wall. Using her Kyuubi enhanced senses she guessed which wall lead to the outside. Lucky for her one does. Her last room must have been deeper in the cave because she couldn't hear any noises to indicate it was close to the outside. If she presses her ear against the back wall where her bed is at night, she can hear the faint sounds of insects and wind. During the morning she can clearly hear birds. With a determined gleam, Naruto stops in front of the back wall and raises her fist. It was the next morning that they noticed Naruto was gone. One of Madara's lackeys reported that she was gone when he arrived with breakfast. Her method of escape? She turned her wall into a back door. She must have unbelievable luck to blast open a cave wall and not have anyone hear it. You know that saying, don't shoot the messenger? Well, let's just say that Madara doesn't. After throwing a tantrum fitting of an S-ranked missing nin, he sent every member out to look for her. Since Sasori, Hidan and Kakuzu are all dead, it left Kisame, Itachi, Deidara, Zetsu, Conan, and Pain to do the searching. Setting out in pairs of two, Itachi wasn't surprised at all when Kisame broke out in deranged laughter immediately after leaving the base. Not even sparing him a glance, Itachi took off at a run. The Uchiha heir wasn't quite sure how to feel about this. Not only the escape but the whole thing. Being ordered to impregnate a boy-turned-girl isn't exactly your usual run-of-the-mill Tuesday. The entire situation is quite messed up. Not that he can judge. He is after all known as an S-class Nukanen for slaughtering his entire clan. Let's face it, when you need someone to complete some undesirable task, Itachi is the go-to person for it, no questions asked. It was a definite character flaw. Maybe had he asked more questions his clan no sense brooding about that. You can't turn back time. Nevertheless, he was definitely not expecting to knock up his little brother's best friend. He wasn't really expecting to knock up anyone. Kids just weren't in his plan. The plan being, to stay with Akatsuki until Sasuke eventually comes and kills him. Nowhere in that plan is there room for a baby. Dead people can't care for babies. As far as he's concerned, he's a dead man walking. He died that night 6 years ago with his mother and father. So why exactly did he follow Madara's orders? Simply put, he had no choice. Choosing not to would mean leaving Akatsuki, most likely after a few battles to the death, of course. Unacceptable for two reasons. Akatsuki is Sasuke's only lead to find him and he can't let himself be killed by anyone else. His death is Sasuke's, he promised it to his brother. It was a promise he intended to keep no matter what. Therefore, he sleeps with Naruto. Follows orders like a good little shinobi and doesn't ask any of the questions he wants to. Questions like, what happens to the child and will it be killed? In a way, Itachi misses the regulation psych evaluations he had to do in Anbu. He really wanted someone to ask him, and how does that make you feel? He doesn't really have an answer, but just knowing that someone cares about his opinion would be nice. Of course, no one in Akatsuki would dare ask the Uchiha such a personal question. You do not make friends in Akatsuki, better yet you do not make friends with S-ranked criminals. No one so much as dared ask about Naruto. He had gotten a few amused looks from Kisame in the beginning, but a few frosty looks had put a quick end to that. So how he felt in one word, conflicted. One goal, die by Sasuke's hand, and now everything is messed up. In a way he feels relieved that Naruto escaped. Allowing himself to die and orphan his child does not sit well with him. He thinks if there is anything that could make him give up his goal, it might be that. Fortunately, he can trust Naruto to take care of their child and complete his duty by atoning his sins. Neither Sasuke nor his clan will rest in peace as long as he lives. This is something he truly believes, yet still he is uneasy. He doesn't like breaking from the plan. This baby is a huge deviation from his plan. As a child genius, Itachi has always been seen as intelligent, cool and collected. As a shinobi he has always been the best, following every instruction to the T. As a result, he has been unable to stop thinking about the situation he has now found himself in. For weeks afterwards that night had played in his mind. Every touch, gasp and breath. Itachi was by no means a virgin. Leaving the village at 12 he was fortunate enough to escape those kinds of missions. Once he got to his teenage years though he decided to sat his curiosity. Between that and very few occasions on missions for Akatsuki, he knew enough about. That night though, none of the others can compare. He's not sure if it's because of the situation or Naruto, but it was the best UAL experience he's had to date. This raises uncomfortable questions in his mind since Naruto wasn't exactly willing and it's Naruto. Newly turned girl of 16 years. The age doesn't bug him. Shinobi die young and have kids younger. A 4-year age difference now may seem a lot to a civilian, but shinobi are adults from the moment they accept that forehead protector. He knows it could have been much worse for Naruto. It could have been Kisame or even Zetsu. This thought comforts him. He was gentle, attentive to her needs, and he knows he's good looking. His fanbase in Konoha was much more massive than his younger brothers. Her reactions all showed that she had a pleasant experience. She made all the right noises and her body reacted accordingly. So there really was no reason to feel guilty or worry. He was just following orders and completed them in the nicest way makes him logically conclude that it is not guilt or worry that causes this memory to plague him so. Why then did it take him weeks to shake off the sound of her gasps and the memory of her body pressed against his? Has never affected him like this. Could it be because this is the first time he has slept with someone he knows? Was it because she was his first virgin? He has no answer and pushes these thoughts to the back of his mind. Instead he chooses to stew over his impending fatherhood. Itachi never had a childhood. The only child he was ever around was Sasuke, and even then he never took care of Sasuke as a baby. His experience with children is sadly, very little. He has no idea what kind of father he would make. His father wasn't really a great example. The man never abused him, he provided a roof over his head, clothes on his body and food on the table, but emotional need weren't his father's forte. His mother was the one who took care of such needs and not often. Surely not since before he learned to talk and walk. His father raised him with a strict set of ideals, one being to show no emotion. Like his father, it could also be said that he too was not knowledgeable in emotional behavior. This worst part of this whole thing is that very soon he will be dead, so why exactly is he grievously brooding about this? It does not matter what kind of father he will be because he isn't going to get the chance. Despite this, he has spent the last 5 months thinking non-stop. Conflicted indeed. Naruto's escape was just one more thing to feel conflicted about. One thing he could say for sure about it though is that he doesn't want her or his child to die, and so, he's glad she escaped. He dislikes not knowing where she has run off with his child to, and this annoys him. He decides to take a break for his sanity and instead chooses to contemplate the escape itself. The cave wall seemed to have a small opening smashed into it. He knows that Naruto does not have the strength to smash the wall, probably not even as a male. It reminds him of the technique Naruto's pink-haired teammate, Sakura, uses. A technique of the Godem Hokage, Tsunade Senju. The technique uses chakra to strengthen the muscles. It is very difficult to use because it requires excellent chakra control. Naruto is not known for good or even mediocre chakra control, meaning Naruto somehow managed to drastically improve her chakra control in 5 months. He wonders how she accomplished this with a chakra suppressor on, but shrugs it off. He knows there are internal chakra exercises but didn't think they could improve a person's control to such an extent. The chakra collar is another problem. Even if Naruto didn't have a full 12-hour head start, the collar suppresses both hers and Kyuubi's chakra signatures completely. This makes any chakra sensing tracking techniques useless. In other words, it was very unlikely any of the searching Akatsuki members would find the escaped Jinchuriki. He allowed himself to feel a small sense of satisfaction at this. It seems the girl was not given quite as much credit as she deserved. Everything about this plan was very intelligent and well executed. Following this logic, she would obviously not go through all of this only to foolishly return to Konoha. Naruto would not be found. Absent-mindedly switching from running on the ground to hopping through trees with Kisame silently following, he narrowed his eyes. This left him with one other conclusion. The blonde and his child were now MIA with no hopes of finding them anytime soon. Her escape was a double-edged blade. On one side she eluded the Akatsuki, but on the other she eluded him as well. He was unable to suppress a strong wave of irritation. He was not only irritated that there is nothing he can do about the situation, but even more frustrated that it was affecting him like this. Despite his conflicted feelings, when she was in the base at least raising the child was an option. Now that the option was taken from him, he realized that he very much wanted to at least see the birth of his child. His eyes tightened and he unconsciously picked up speed. It was not logical to feel this way. He could not hold her escape from an organization out to kill her against her. He also could not expect her to include him in such plans. As far as she knows, he is quite loyal to Madara and killed his whole clan. Not only that, but he didn't say anything to her at all to hint that he cared about the child. He did not visit or inquire about the child, not that it was possible. Madara wanted her isolated except for her midwife, but she didn't know that either. For the first time since he could remember, Itachi was not thinking with logic, but emotion. He did not like this at all but was unable to stop it. His eyes snapped to the left when Kisame landed on the branch next to him. Better off slowing down. We'll be stuck looking for this shitty brat for Kami knows how long, until Madara calls us back with our rings, stated the blue-haired man with annoyance. Itachi's lips twitched with the urge to scowl at his partner. Kisame didn't notice. Should have let me cut off a leg, he added angrily. Itachi turned to face him slowly. His Mangekyu swirled fiercely as he leveled the taller male with his deadliest glare. Kisame's eyes widened and he wisely did not speak again. Naruto never quite realized how useful her lucky streak actually was. During her trip with Ero Sennin, she spent a lot of time in whore houses and gambling halls. While he was off, getting information, being perverted, she became quite the old hand at gambling. Beginner's luck never quite stopped for her. When Jiraiya finally came looking for her, Naruto had amassed quite the sum. Every place they went to, Naruto managed to collect a large amount of money, much to Ero Sennin's disbelief. Sure, she enjoyed making money. Being an orphan who was given quite a small monthly income from the third Hokage and later on a genin on D-ranked mission pay, she never had extra cash to spare. She could barely make ends meet. Ramen may be her favorite, but her main reason for eating so much of it was how cheap it is. Gambling opened up many new doors for her. At the end of the trip she had managed to save more money than she'd probably be able to use. After a while though, it stopped being fun and became kind of boring. Ero Sennin complained endlessly how much he would appreciate such a lucky streak and often begged her for money for some reason or other. Naruto usually laughed at him or shrugged him off. She never imagined she would test her unnatural luck in a situation like this though. Despite making a small opening near the bottom of the wall, just big enough to crawl through, it still made a loud sound when it broke. She didn't waste any time freezing. Instead, she carefully fell to the ground and crawled through the hole as quickly as she could manage without injuring her baby. As soon as she was on her feet, she sent a large amount of chakra to her legs in a burst without so much as looking around. Traveling like this was very disorienting, she found. What felt like a split second later, she was shaking her head dizzily and clutching her stomach. Her children did not seem to appreciate it either, because she had to fight the urge to hurl. Crouching down and breathing deeply a few times, she waited for her Naso to pass. When she felt better, she stood and took a look around, not immediately seeing anything. The first thing she noticed was the temperature. It was very hot, hotter than fire country but cooler than wind country. There weren't quite as many trees as you would find in the land of fire, but there were still many. There wasn't any of the rocky terrain that earth country is famous for, nor any of the mountains that lightning country is known for. The air had a dampness to it as well, ruling out grass country, rice country and tea country. Based on all of that left Naruto with water country, hot springs country, river country, rain country, waterfall country, wave country and whirlpool country. Deciding that it was very unlikely for the Akatsuki to have a base on one of the islands, she crossed out water country, wave country and whirlpool country. Rain country was almost always covered in torrential rain, so she dropped that one as well. That left her with river country, hot springs country, and waterfall country. All three bordered fire country, which would explain the trees, but due to the heat she chose to cross out waterfall country, which tended to be cooler, being closer to earth country. This left her with two choices. She was either in hot springs country or river country. For some reason her instincts were pointing to the former. Deciding she wasted enough time, the blonde decided to keep moving, looking around every once in a while for any more clues. After a few more bursts, she concluded that she was right when she found herself surrounded by a number of small natural hot springs. Now that she knew where she was, she started thinking about where to go. During her travels she left a few scrolls with money hidden in different places. One in wave country, one in river country, one in wind country, one in tea country and a number in fire country. Making a split-second decision, she decided to head to tea country. Her reasons were: it's one of the lands without a hidden village. farthest from 4 of the great hidden villages, and still bordering the Land of Fire. The only downside was that she'd have to enter Fire Country to get to Tea Country. It wasn't something she wanted to do, but there was an added advantage that she could collect 5 of her hidden money scrolls. She hid quite a few on all the borders of Fire Country. Following the coastal border along Fire Country, she could collect those scrolls and make her way into Tea Country. Once she entered Fire Country, she would have to run though so that she didn't pass her scrolls. Feeling a renewed sense of determination, Naruto sent a massive burst of chakra to her legs. It didn't take her very long to exit Tea Country. Seeing the Land of Fire made Naruto both happy and sad at the same time. She dearly wishes she could go home and had to shake off her sense of longing. Being a Konoha native, Naruto had no trouble tree hopping at a fast pace. The sky was starting to lighten by the time Naruto collected all 5 skulls. She felt exhausted, but pushed herself to go on, switching to using chakra. A trip from Konoha to the Land of Tea was usually 5 days walking and 3 shinobi speed. Lucky for Naruto, she is able to travel much faster than the average shinobi because of her high chakra and stamina levels. Traveling alone gave her the added bonus of not having to slow or brake for her comrades. Her survival instincts and motherly instincts created a sense of urgency that had her moving extra fast as well. Add on top of that her new technique, and the blonde was already a little more than halfway to Tea Country. By the time that the blonde entered Tea Country, the sun had already been out for a few hours. The last few hours were torturous for the pregnant woman. She was pretty much running on sheer determination. Her chakra was almost all out, her muscles were aching, stomach cramping, and eyes ready to close. Despite all of this, she pushed on. Naruto was determined not to stop until she was deep into Tea Country. She remembered the 2 island villages Team 7 had their mission on and decided to avoid going that far into Tea Country. She doubted Idate or anyone else would recognize her, change and all, but you could never be too cautious. She decided to head to one of the small villages in the center of Tea Country, Moritani Mura. She passed by it with arrow Sennin and hid her scroll not far from there. She'd make a quick stop to get it, ditch her chakra collar and settle in that village. The sun was burning down on her when she finally reached Moritani Mura. The village was small and peaceful. It was located in a valley surrounded by forest, though the forest could hardly be considered as such compared to the forests of Fire Country. The Shodem Hokage built the forests around Konoha, which is the reason why the trees are so abnormally massive. To Naruto, the forest surrounding this village was more like a meadow. Nevertheless, she had liked the village and remembered it for this reason. Without the chakra collar, she was paranoid of being found. She didn't think any of the Akatsuki were chakra sensors, but there were techniques to find people. For that they needed to be within a certain distance though, and she didn't think anyone would search Tea Country. Nevertheless, as soon as she settled in, she would need to do something to hide her signature. She made a mental note to ask Kyubi about any seals she could use on herself and her house when she found one. The blonde used henge to cover any grass stains on her dress, her whisker marks, and her shoe-less dirty feet. She also changed her skin, eyes and hair color to pale, black and blue-black. The coloring was a copy of Sasuke, but she figured it would later explain the coloring of her children. She pasted on a smile and approached the first person she seen. The lucky villager was a man in his mid-20s. He had black hair and green eyes that made her think of Sakura. He seemed to be working class and looked to be on some sort of lunch break as he was sitting outside and eating a sandwich. The blonde toon-red brunette cleared her throat quietly before starting. "Excuse me, I was wondering if you could point me to an inn?" she questioned, smiling. The man jumped, obviously startled. His eyes widened upon landing on her. She wondered if it was because of her obvious pregnancy. The man stood up. "My wife runs the inn. What can we help you with?" he asked in a rough voice. Naruto attempted to smile sweetly like Tsunami-san from Wave and rubbed her baby bump. "I'm looking to settle in this village and wanted to purchase a home, but I am quite tired from the journey. If you could direct me to the inn, I would be most grateful," she answered, looking up shyly. He looked surprised at her answer. "Where did you travel from?" he asked, immediately setting Naruto on edge. She scanned him thoroughly before relaxing. He noticed her hesitation and added, "If you don't mind me asking." Naruto faked an embarrassed look. "It's all right. I traveled from Wind Country. My family lives there in a small village. They disowned me when I married a shinobi from Suna. He died on a mission, leaving me widowed and pregnant. I sold our home and belonging and decided to travel to a much more peaceful place and raise my children. I don't want them to grow up in a ninja village. I want them to have the peaceful upbringing I, myself had. I couldn't bear it if I lost them too. They are all I have left in this world, she explained, breaking into silent tears at the end. The man looked sorry for asking. He seemed fiercely angry at her parents on her behalf and displayed the appropriate sadness and pity about her husband's death. I'm sorry for your loss. You couldn't have picked a better village though. Moritani Mura is very peaceful. The community is close and it is an excellent place to raise children. My wife, Mika, can get you settled, fed and rested. I'm sure she'll be able to help you find a home as well. I'll take you there right now. Let me just run in quick and let the guys know, he stated, giving her a small smile and walking into a building a little ways behind him. Naruto read the sign above, Yoshida Construction. She didn't wait very long. He came out quickly and set off at a slow pace that was obviously for her benefit. She stifled a laugh, if only he knew. Usually being underestimated would piss her off, but now it just amused her. How rude of me, I never got your name. I'm Yoshida Tadashi, nice to meet you, he introduced, holding out a hand. Naruto daintily shook his hand, smiling sweetly, Shimizu Natsumi, pleased to meet you as well. Tadashi grinned in reply, it suits you, he stated, before releasing her hand and continuing into town. Being a small town, it didn't take them long to reach the inn. It looked clean and in good condition. The sign read, Yoshida Inn, making Naruto sigh at the lack of creativity. He led her through the door and down a hall, calling out as he went, Mika, you have a customer. A feminine voice replied instantly. How many times have I told you, Dashi, do not yell in my inn, she yelled back. Naruto stifled a laugh as Tadashi rolled his eyes. They rounded a corner and came upon a desk. A petite woman with white hair and violet eyes was folding what looked like bed sheets. She turned to them as they entered. Mika, this is Natsumi. She's looking to buy a house. I was wondering if you could get her settled in and help her out? He asked, straight to the point. He approached the small woman, kissing her sweetly on the cheek and half embracing her as he talked. Mika turned to examine Naruto and smiled. Sure thing. Pardon me, but I just had to know, when are you due? She asked excitedly. Naruto grinned reflexively. This is my 6th month, so in 3 months, she replied, keeping it vague since she had no idea what day it was. Mika smiled back. Ah, an August baby then, she replied. Naruto nodded. Babies, she stated, then added, 3. Mika's eyes widened and she let out a loud whistle. Damn, 3 at a time. You'll definitely have a handful with them, she pointed out good-naturedly. Hope your husband is ready, she added, making her husband stiffen and Naruto freeze before faking a sad look and looking away. Her husband died, Tadashi clarified, hugging his small wife tighter. Mika gasped. Oh no, I am sorry, I need to stop putting my foot in my mouth, she apologized, frowning sadly at Naruto. Naruto let out a tiny smile. No worries, you didn't know, she replied easily. Tadashi decided to interrupt. I've got to get back to work. I'll see you 2 ladies later on. Bye, he stated, kissing his wife on the cheek once more. He added, Natsumi, with a nod and departed. Mika turned to Natsumi. I'll bet you're hungry. You're awfully small for triplets, she said with a concerned air, shooing Naruto down a hallway. Naruto allowed herself to be shooed and smiled sweetly. I don't feel small at all. I feel huge, she replied, flippantly making the shorter woman guffaw. Naruto's eyes widened at seeing such a tiny woman let out huge barks of laughter. She seemed like the type to giggle demurely. Her laughter was contagious though, and Naruto joined in. It comes with pregnancy. The first one is always the worst. I suppose yours is triple that since you are carrying 3, Mika stated, prodding Naruto to take a seat on a stool at the counter. She turned to a pot on the stove, stirred it and moved over to a huge rice cooker. Within minutes Naruto had a huge helping of rice, beef and potato stew. She ate 2 huge helpings before declaring herself stuffed. Mika led her to a room and upon finding out that she had no other clothes, lent her one of her maternity dresses. Naruto was left to shower in peace, Mika telling her they'd look around town tomorrow morning. Being taller, the knee-length dark blue dress was actually thigh-length on her. Naruto made sure to lock her door, not wanting Tadashi or Mika to catch her without her hands on. She settled onto the bed wanting to talk to Kyuubi about a seal but unable to fight off her exhaustion any longer. After breakfast the next morning Naruto set out with Mika. They first went to the village leader, a kind elderly man named whom Mika referred to as Akeda-san. He turned out to be quite helpful, asking his grandson to show them the available houses. His grandson was either the same age or a little older than Naruto, she guessed around 17 years old. He introduced himself as Akeda Kato. He was thin and a few inches taller than Naruto with rust-red hair and gray eyes. He was very respectful to his grandfather and extremely polite to both Mika and Natsumi. Kato explained to them that there were 4 houses available. 3 were in the village and 1 in the surrounding forest, meadow Naruto corrected. He started out by showing her the 3 in the village. She wasn't really happy with the location of them. They were all in the center of the village, close to other houses, shop, and the bustling market. Living in Konoha she was quite used to noise but, being undercover as she felt some isolation would be helpful. The walk to the 4th house was about 10 minutes from the edge of the village. Kato explained that the house used to belong to his uncle but when the man died it was left empty. No one wanted to buy it because of its isolated position. Naruto had already pretty much decided to buy it unless it was a shithole. She could afford repairs and even an addition if needed and already had a company in mind. They broke off the dirt path through the trees to travel a smaller dirt path into the trees. The path opened up to a large clearing, a medium-sized, 2-story house sat in the middle and to the back of the clearing. The house was painted a faded and peeling white and there was a decent fenced-out yard. The painted wooden fence was equally peeling. There was a flower garden overflowing with weeds lining the front of the house, minus the door. The door was a dark-colored wood with 2 windows on either side. Kato pulled out a set of keys. The door opened easily and the 2 women followed him in. Inside the house seemed to be traditional. There was a small area, with a cubby to put shoes, a few stairs, a closet, a short hallway and another door, this one sliding. The floor was wooden and the door was a beautifully painted shoji screen. The shoji screen had delicately painted flowers twisting up it. Sliding open the door, it led into a large living room area with a fireplace, some stairs and 2 more doors. One led into a bathroom complete with tub and the other a huge kitchen, dining room. Upstairs, another hallway with 3 doors. All 3 were bedrooms and the master bedroom had an ensuite bathroom. All in all the place was in pretty good shape inside. It needed a good cleaning, a fresh coat of paint and some decorating but that was all. Naruto turned to Kato. I really love this house, but I have a question. Is there running water all the way out here? She asked, gazing at the bathroom sink. Kato nodded. My uncle was a plumber. He built this house for his wife. She was an artist, she loved nature. When she died he was heartbroken. My father says he died of a broken heart. Naruto stiffened. He didn't die in here, right? She whispered, looking around shiftily. Shinobi or not, she did not do ghosts. Kato let out a startled laugh. Mika jumped at the sound before taking one look at Naruto and bursting into laughter. Afraid of ghosts are you? She questioned, making her voice spooky and wiggling her fingers at the disguised blonde. Naruto glared at her. Quit that, she mumbled, looking away with a blush of embarrassment. Kato's eyes widened at her pout. Cute. He blinked before clearing his throat. No he didn't. He died in my grandfather's home. When he was sick he moved back with the rest of the family, he answered, smiling reassuringly at Naruto. Naruto let out a sigh at relief and Mika smirked. Naruto ignored it. How much does your grandfather want? She asked, mentally wondering how much she had in total. She should have opened them and counted her money before leaving the inn. Kato frowned. Well, he isn't asking much for it because of its location. Despite having more land than the other available houses, this one will be cheaper. 10,000 ryo, if you can't afford to pay it all at once it's fine and we can set up payments, he answered. Naruto's eyes widened. Her apartment rent in Konoha was 600 ryo a month. Being a small village the cost of living is quite less than what she would pay in Konoha. To buy a house the same size as this in Konoha Naruto would probably have to pay closer to 40,000 ryo. Deal. I can pay it all now. I'd like to stop by the inn and maybe speak to Tadashi-san about fixing any repairs before I move in, replied Naruto, already planning the list of things she would need to get done before she could move into her new home. It took 2 weeks to repair and furnish the house. The fence was painted with a fresh coat of white and the house a light blue. The entrance hall was painted a fresh white and Naruto added a border with flowered to match the shoji. The living room was painted a light brown to offset the dark wood floor and dark brown furniture. The kitchen definitely turned out her favorite, being painted a pale orange color to brighten up the dark wood of the floor, wooden cabinets and low sitting table. The cushions around the table were a darker orange, matching the window curtains. The bathroom was done in the same light blue as the outside of the house. The hallway upstairs was painted the same light brown as the living room. The first and smallest of the bedrooms was painted a lilac color, most of the floor covered by a shaggy white rug. The bedroom furniture was also made of white wood and decorated in carved bed had matching roses twining up the canopy poles and a gauzy canopy covering it. Lilac-colored bows tied back the gauzy curtains and the darker purple curtains covered in small lilacs on the window. The bed was covered in a matching dark purple lilac decorated spread. It would make the perfect princess room for a little girl. The second, slightly bigger bedroom was painted forest green. The furniture was dark brown wood, matching the floors, and a shaggy dark brown carpet covered most of the room. Had 2 matching beds, one against each wall, with light green blankets decorated in swirling dark green leaves covered the bed and a dark brown curtain covered the single window. The room reminded her of Konoha. She hoped her boys would like it. She didn't quite know what she was thinking when she asked them to paint her bedroom red. The same orange of the kitchen would have suited her much better. Instead, she went with crimson paint, black furniture and red covers with black and white bamboo designs. She was glad for the size of the room. Her queen-size bed and dresser with mirror fit and left plenty of room. Along the other wall were 3 identical black wooden cribs, a matching change table and a black rocking chair in the opposite corner. The first crib had red bedding, the second had dark blue bedding and the third had violet bedding. Naruto had received a lot of baby stuff from the shower that Mika had thrown her at the beginning of her second week in Moritani Mura. The two had gotten very close during her 2-week stay at their family inn. She even got to meet Tadashi and Mika's children, 6-year-old Aiko and 5-year-old Daishi. Anything else she needed she stocked up on. She filled the pantry with non-perishable foods too for when she got less mobile. Naruto wanted to be prepared for everything. After purchasing her house, Naruto conferred with Kyuubi about a seal to hide her chakra signature. Lucky for her, the great Kitsune Biju knew of one. According to the fox, it's a very old and powerful seal. He doubted anyone left alive even knew about it. The seal was from the time of the Rikuudo Sennin seal, was a pretty simple design that she had a shadow clone ink onto the back of her left shoulder. The seal sort of looked like a tribal sun with feminine swirling lines and tiny kanji. It effectively hid both her own and Kyuubi's chakra. It prevented anyone from finding them with techniques and even chakra sensors. The best part is that it continued to work even when she used her chakra. Meaning that hypothetically, she could summon 100 clones next door to Madara and he wouldn't be able to sense her clones, or the large amount of chakra she summoned to make the clones. The seal effectively negated the chakra suppressing training that Enbu go through. Not only does it save time, it is less effort to hold up, and simply the smarter choice because even if you suppress your chakra, as soon as you do a jutsu everyone will know where you are. The seal will also hold if you are wounded or even killed. It is definitely a revolutionary thing for assassins. If she ever made it back to Konoha, Naruto promised to show it to Tsunade Bakken. At almost 6 months and 3 weeks, Naruto felt for the first time that things might actually be okay. She was safe and hidden in a small village. She had made some kind friends. She bought a house and made it into a home, and she got everything she'd need for her kids. Overall, she felt quite satisfied. There were a lot of things that she was ignoring, like Konoha, Sasuke Teme, Akatsuki and Itachi, but she felt much more secure than she did before. Now that she was settled, she could slowly start to think about those things. In fact, she should probably send Toad summons to Ero Sennin, Bachan, and even Sasuke Teme. Write letters about what happened to let them know she is safe and in hiding. She wasn't sure if she wanted to tell them she was pregnant but figured they would find out whenever she came out of hiding anyways. She doubted Sasuke would care at all about her whereabouts, if her toad summons could even find him. Despite her doubts, she still wanted to contact him, probably more than anyone else. Weird as it may be, she still considered the Uchiha her best friend. She was a little wary about telling him about Itachi but ultimately decided he deserved to know. She still remembered that angry 12-year-old boy who vowed to kill his brother and restore his clan. She wondered how he would feel about her helping with his goal. Sasuke would be her baby's uncle. What a strange thought that was. She laughed when she imagined 3 small children chasing the Teme yelling Ji-san. It seemed both funny and distant, like a made-up joke or an inaccessible dream. Regardless, she would really like to see it happen. She had her own ready-made family, but these kids made Sasuke her family too, more so than he already was. She wanted nothing more than to give him even this small piece of peace. There isn't a person who deserved it more. The thought made her sad too. Both of them were orphans, even this family though would still be incomplete. The father of her children is a missing nen. It's impossible to even think it could go somewhere. She wondered if maybe she could find love someday. She once claimed her greatest dream was to be Hokage, now though she really just wanted to be loved. She wanted love for both her and her children. She didn't care who or where, just as long as they truly loved her and the kids. She fell asleep in her new house for the first time, feeling safe and warm. That's all for now. If you enjoyed, then please like, share and do comments.